What's happening, Hardscapers? Today we're going to talk about how to price a paver project properly. Let's get into this. During this video, we're going to break it up into different segments. We're going to do direct costs, which are your materials and labor on a project. We're going to get into our indirect costs for that project. That's things like overhead expenses. And we're going to talk about profit on top of that to be able to give you a way to actually price a paver project. Now, we're not going to talk about dollar amounts because that's going to be very different from market to market. That's why when you hear people ask, how much would you charge for this project? Nobody can give you a good answer unless they're directly in your market and unless they have the exact same indirect costs that you may have in your business. Instead, what we're going to do in this video is give you the tools and the theory that you need to be able to go ahead and price a project and earn a profit on top of what you're pricing. And if you're still pricing by the square foot, we have a video talking about why you should not be doing this anymore. It's going to be linked in the description below and show up at the end of this video. But essentially, square foot just doesn't cover all of the variables when you're getting into a hardscape project, a paver project. And square foot's good for pricing materials because that's how we purchase materials in, but it's not good for charging labor. Labor's by the hour. So we want to measure and be able to estimate based on our hours so that when we're in the field, we can actually compare the amount of hours it took us versus the amount of hours that we estimated, and then to be able to revise those numbers as we continue along in our business. So here's how we price our paver projects, starting with the direct costs. Like I said, materials and labor, you can include subcontractors, rentals, everything involved with that direct cost of those projects. Things you need for that project to make it happen, but also stay on that site. Now, when it comes to pricing out materials, it's very simple. You take the paver project, the amount of square foot, that's length times width, multiply those to get your square feet, and then find out how much those pavers are going to cost you. Some points to consider here are your pavers. How are you purchasing them from your supplier? Sometimes a paver product is actually a special order item, which means you have to buy by the full bundle, and you don't want to leave these details out when you're pricing a project. An additional calculation you may need to do is your border paver versus the interior paver or the field pavers. If they're different color, you're going to need to have to calculate how much your field pavers take up of that total square footage versus how much your border pavers take up of your total square footage. Just to run through a quick example, if we're doing a 10 by 10 patio and that's 100 square feet, well, our border is actually going to be 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10. That's 40 linear feet of our total project. And then we need to decide what the paver is going to be to take up that linear footage for our border. And so if we choose a paver that is 12 inches or 1 foot in depth, so it's going to eat up that much of our project, then we're going to multiply that 1 foot by our 40 linear feet to give us our total square feet. So our total square feet is 40 square feet that border is going to take up, and we then subtract that from our 100 to give us 60 square feet for our interior or our field pavers. So now we know how much pavers we need in terms of square footage. We can multiply that by the dollar amount for those square foot pavers to give us our total paver amount, but we still have more materials on top of that. We need to calculate geotextile, geogrid, our base material, and a quick calculation for a base material to get our cubic yards would be the square foot multiplied by the depth in inches multiplied by 0.003 to give us our cubic yards that we're going to need for gravel for that project. But we also need to factor in the amount of soil we're going to be excavating and how we're going to be disposing of that. Personally, for me and my business, we run bins. So we also need to figure out how many bins we need and include that into our materials because that's a cost of sale item. We don't use that going forward with future projects, so it's still a material cost or a cost of sale item. We need to factor in the polymeric sand, the edge restraint, any topsoil, seed, or sod to finish off that project, and really anything else that comes with that project. Once again, materials or cost of sale items. If we're renting a piece of equipment, that gets added into this as well. But your equipment cost, if you own a piece of equipment, that's different from this. That would be an indirect cost because that equipment's going to follow you to the next project and not remain on that project. So that's the materials or cost of sale items. Now we need to factor in our labor. And how do we decide how much this project is going to take us in terms of labor? Well, we use production rates in our business. So we break down that project step by step from the excavation excavation, to the base preparation, to the screeding, the laying of the pavers, the jointing compound, the edge restraint, as well as the final cleanup. We break that paver project down step by step, and we have a production rate in our business for each of these steps. It helps us to estimate this project. It's an average amount of people hours to complete a certain amount of square foot for a specific project. But we also get fairly detailed with these production rates. For example, we include the excavation depth because that may differ from depending on whether we're doing a driveway or a backyard patio. We also include the access if it is a backyard patio so that we know exactly what piece of equipment we're bringing for that project. A 36-inch access is going to give us a smaller piece of equipment than a full access backyard where we can get a larger piece of equipment on and increase our productivity on that job site. When we're laying pavers, a slab is going to lay a lot faster than smaller 4x8 stones when it comes to laying those. So even pavers have their own production rates. We just go small, medium, and large in my business. And the reason why we break these production rates down step by step is we can measure these in the field then to continuously update those production rates to a point where we feel comfortable with where we are efficiency-wise on job sites. So for example, if our excavation production rate for a backyard patio where we're digging down 10 inches, we may be somewhere around 1.5 people hours for every 100 square foot of backyard patio. And if we are doing 1,000 square feet, that just averages out to be 15 people hours to be able to complete that. And we can continue that throughout all of our production rates. To give us a total amount of hours that we need to allocate to that project, we can then see what employees are going to be eating up those hours and multiply their labor costs to be able to get our total labor costs for this project. Now, when you're calculating labor, you also want to include a certain markup to be able to recoup insurance costs, payroll taxes, and so on if you don't exactly know how much those cost you for every hour. And with that, those are our direct costs on a job site for our project. If we take our revenue and we subtract it by our direct costs, we get our gross profit. Now to get our net profit, we need to then subtract our indirect costs. And those are our overhead expenses. And overhead expenses are things that carry with us as a business. Anything that shows up on our tax return at the end of the year, on our balance sheet, things like equipment would be an overhead expense, but also things like tools. Marketing is a big one. Any lawyer fees, professional fees, accounting, bookkeeping, office staff would be a good one as well. Their salary or whatever projected hourly amount you're going to be paying for them for that season, as well as you, the business owner. Your salary needs to be included in this. The profit from the business is not your salary. That's above and beyond your salary. You need to be paying yourself as a business owner. All of these things need to be added up and how much they cost you year in and year out to give you your total indirect costs for a project. But how much of those indirect costs get added to a specific project? Well, to calculate that, we need to know how many hours we have in a season to be able to make back our overhead expenses. For example, if we have 1,000 hours in a season to make money, and we've decided that our project is going to take us 100 hours of that season, we know that that's 10% of our season for that entire project to be completed from start to finish. So we need to add 10% of our indirect costs to that project to be able to make back that money. And so with our indirect costs out of the way and added into that project based on that percentage amount, we then need to add all of these direct and indirect costs up, add a profit percentage on top of this, and that would be a margin that we would add. And with that, we have a subtotal, which we can add any sales taxes or anything else that you need to add to this. And that is how you price a paver project. Hey, if you've seen throughout this video us using a software, that's the How to Hardscape headquarters software. It's going to help you be able to create a company-wide budget and to be able to allocate indirect costs to your projects automatically, use production rates to be able to get labor time, add materials as your cost of sale, and give you a total with a profit percentage on top of that, while also being able to track your labor hours in the field using our clock in, clock out, and our production rate clock in, clocks out, timesheets, so many more different features, including job costing, so you can see how you actually did with your actual hours and material costs for a project when it's done and compare it to your estimated and see where you went right, where you went wrong, and how you can improve throughout that season. So if you are interested in that, link is in the description below. If you have any questions, comments, leave them in the comment section below. I hope this video has helped you in some way. Like this video if you found it helpful for whatever reason, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more hardscaping content like this. Thank you so much for watching.